Hello everyone, I'm Ankit and you're watching StudyIQ IAS English. In our today's video, we'll try to understand why communism as a political ideology has failed in India. Right now, the notes that I will be using in our today's discussion, the notes you can download them at a particular Telegram channel called as ETS Live. And while you're at it downloading the notes, please do not forget to subscribe to the channel also. And also, this topic of communism is very important from your prelims exam perspective. How is it important? We'll show you at the end, right? Now, the reason why we're discussing this topic is because in 2025 it marks 100th year of establishment of two very big political institutions in India. On one hand, there is RSS, which has gotten a foothold as far as Indian political climate is concerned because it is aligned very closely to the ruling party in center, that is the Bharatiya Janata Party. On another hand, there is Communist Party of India, and when you compare Communist Party of India with, let's say, BJP, you'll realize Communist Party of India is in sharp decline, so much so that it has lost national relevance in Indian politics. So what is the reason why communism, which is seen as a fertile ground in a country which is developing or having a large population of people who are below poverty line, why is communism as an ideology failed in India? Now, to understand this, we need to first understand what communism as an ideology subscribes to, what it means. Well, this is a political economic ideology which was made famous by the Communist Manifesto, which was written by Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels. So this book is considered as an origin of the communist philosophy. Now, there are some basic beliefs communists believe in. This include that private ownership of means of production like land, labor, factories, etc., those need not be private and they needs to be abolished if they are private. So who will own these resources, land, labor, capital? They will be collectively owned by the society. So in communism, there is no concept of private property, only common property, that is a social or community based property. Similarly, the distribution of goods and services in communism will not be done on the basis of profits or not be done in the basis of purchasing power capacity. Rather, distribution of goods and services in communism will be based on the element of need. And the ultimate goal, the end goal that the communism wants is to establish a classless and a stateless society where no one would be exploited. So this is the theory of communism. Now, communism, it gained quite a lot in India because of some particular reason. Now we need to understand, for a long period of time we were under the exploitation of a colonial rule, and this resulted into existence of a deep social and economic equality in India. Now because of this inequality that existed in India during the colonial rule, we see there were many peasants or farmers who were poor, there were industrial workers who were working in a very substandard or inhumane conditions, and because of this the communist movement in India gained a lot of foothold because of it was made popularized by Bhagat Singh and his associates as well as Gadar movements, etc. Similarly, the presence of a strong trade union base in major metropolitan cities in India before independence, it provided foot soldiers to the movement of communism in India. So this was the reason why communism gained foothold in India. So much so that in the year 2004, when the Lok Sabha elections happened, communist parties, all parties put together, got as much as 59 seats. They were pivotal in supporting the establishment of then UPA government, which was set up under the prime ministership of Manmohan Singh. Now they gave a outside support to UPA and they had a decisive influence in UPA 1 policy. If you realize, disinvestment or privatization of PSUs, it did not happen at all in UPA 1. Why? Because Communist Party of India and other leftist parties were supporting Congress, right? And not just that, they were also having strong governments in states like West Bengal, Tripura and Kerala. So this showed the peak political power that communist parties in India got. They got as much as 59 Lok Sabha seats. They played a very important role in establishment and continuation of UPA government for the first time, and they also got as much as 8% national vote share. Right now, after independence, and because of the political power they got in the first decade of the 21st century, we realized that the ideology as a whole got deep into the ecosystem of India, right? Now they got foothold in trade unions, farmers organizations. They had a very big impact on cultural and student organizations, so much so that many artists, writers and journalists, they even today subscribe to this ideology. You may have realized the kind of movies India was making in 1970s and 80s, where the hero was a poor person who was exploited by a capitalist and politician, right? So all of this shows the deep impact the communist ideologies had in our art and culture, and it showed in the Indian morality or in Indian psyche. So they exercised disproportionate power. The kind of political power they had was okay, but their power over the culture was many degrees more than their political power. And this took hold in the urban youth as well as intelligentsia. But you'll be surprised to know, despite having such cultural hegemony, they were not able to get a foothold in Indian politics. On one hand, they were very dominant in culture, but on another hand, poor and youth people in India, they were driven more towards the right, that is the parties like BJP. So there must be some very good reason, right? We'll discuss those good reasons. First of all, you have to understand, in the last Lok Sabha elections which happened in 2024, communist parties all put together were barely able to get 10 Lok Sabha seats, so much so that their vote share was just 3%, and their powers in the state governments was confined only to one state, that is the southern state of Kerala. And one of the biggest reason is their critical strategic miscalculation that happened in the year 2008. Now, if you remember, one of the biggest political achievements of the UPA government was when they signed Indo-US nuclear deal. And communist parties, all of them, they withdrawn the support from UPA government just because they were signing a deal in national interest. So this was the strategic miscalculation that has been assumed as a death nail for the communist ideology in India. But there are some very good reasons behind it why never they were able to get so deep and so integrated in Indian politics. First is the historical reason. Now, if you're a student of modern history, you'll realize that their stand towards Indian freedom struggle was very shifting. So much so that when India got united under Quit India movement, when Gandhi gave the slogan "Karo ya Maro," communist parties withdraw their support from Quit India movement, because on one hand, their papa, Soviet alliance or Soviet Union, entered into a war with Britain. So they were of the opinion, why should we oppose a war of Britain where Soviet Union was in cahoots with Britain, right? So this created a perception that communists was driven by something which was located outside the country, and they were not fully in line with what was in the national interest or the nationalist aspirations. So this was one mistake they did, which is seen as a historical blunder. Similarly, Marxism, you need to understand, is an imported ideology. This ideology was created specifically for European societies who were at that time industrial in nature, right? They were not agrarian societies, and they were not very religiously diverse as compared to India. So this ideology was meant for ethnically united society, religiously monolithic societies and industrial societies. And on the other hand, India for long has been an agrarian society. India is a society which is divided on the basis of caste and religion. On one hand, Marxism supports the idea that religion is opium of masses and religion is a false consciousness. But on another hand, Indian societies, one of their key aspects of identity is religion, where even today in 2025, we vote for parties based on our religious interest, right? So they failed to take into account how caste or how factors like religion were ingrained deep into Indian psyche. And this shows that their understanding of Indian realities have always been weak. Not so much that the political parties which subscribe to leftist ideology, they are based on principles of democratic centralism, right? Now, in democratic centralism, this kind of a method, it does not allow debate and dissent within the party. So this kind of an atmosphere, when it will be created in a party, you won't be able to understand what is going on the ground. Ground workers won't have a say over you. So this kind of a mentality discourages innovation and internal course correction, which is very important for a political party to function. Now, I need to understand, in 2024, BJP in Lok Sabha election saw this as a setback, and they have course corrected it. Why? Because they got information from their ground level workers. So when ground level workers were able to speak, then only the higher ups or the higher leaders were able to course correct, right? But this, in a current scheme of things, can't happen in a leftist party. Now, also you have to realize one of the most all the popular leaders or political leaders in India, they have gotten popular because they come from a background. They have a very solid voting base. Also, many of these leaders, they subscribe to their caste or community-based identities, right? So this is what makes a political leader a mass leader. But on the other hand, the communist leaders mostly are the ones who have been picked up from universities. So they do not have a grassroots base as compared to the other political leaders. So this is one of the weak aspects, that is the leadership does not have a ground support. Now, another fact is that the core leftist demands like land reforms, welfare schemes, labor protections, public sector expansions, they have been apprehended or appropriated by other political parties in India, mostly Congress and regional parties. So much so that you would imagine a party on the right, that is BJP, it subscribed to the welfare schemes like cash transfers, right? So this historically has been the leftist demand. But when these demands have been fulfilled by other parties, left do not have anything that they can claim which is theirs, right? Also, globalization was a very big event that happened in India after the new economic reforms of 1991. And globalization provided people with higher economic growth, it provided people with jobs, and it created many people or brought many people out of poverty and into middle class. So this, what it did was that it reduced the amount of people who actually subscribe to the leftist ideology. Also, with globalization and liberalization, we see the control of the state over economic resources, it reduced, obviously because of liberalization. And it, in a way, promoted contractual labors, informal labors, and gig-based employments. And this reduced the amount of workers who were subscribed to the ideology of trade unionism. Also, probably the most biggest impact that the leftists had on Indian psyche is that their foreign policy positions have often been outdated. Now, you need to understand they have subscribed to the approach of anti-Americanism and they are very pro-Chinese. So much so that even when India was involved in a Galwan conflict with China, communist parties in India were congratulating the Chinese President Xi Jinping on his new tenure, right? So this is the kind of brain-dead foreign policy stances they have taken, and it gives you an impression that they have went against public opinion whenever the public sentiments was very pro-Indian, right? So this is why left ideology has never been able to got a foothold in Indian politics, and this is the reason of their electoral non-performance. Okay, now before solving the question that appeared in the UPSC exam, I need to tell you something important. Resolution plus batches are important from our exams perspective, and we provide each and every subject that are important for UPSC exam. The classes, live classes, recorded lectures, one-to-one mentorship, everything is provided. Now you can take admissions to one of these batches which are available separately for 27 and 28. Just keep two things in mind. First is that the offer rates that you're getting right now, which is the very cost-effective rates, this rate would increase after tomorrow because tomorrow is when the sale ends. And if you use the code ATS Live before making the payment, you will get maximum discounts on all the courses. Not just 2027, but 2028 as well as optional courses, right? So learn to thrive by using ATS Live. Now, this is the question that appeared in 2020. One common agreement between Gandhism and Marxism is what? Please do let me know the correct answer in the comment section. The ones who answer it correctly would get a thumbs up from my side. And I also want to take your opinion. Have you actually seen a popular leftist leader? If you've been to a college, have you realized that the ideology of communism somewhat is more popular in colleges, but in real life, it does not lead to electoral performances? So what is the reason behind it? Please do let me know in the comment section. Okay, and the notes, if you were to download it, you can go to this particular Telegram channel. If you face difficulties in finding it, this is the QR code you can also scan. So this is all for my side from today. Please have a very good night. We'll see each other again tomorrow, same time, same place.